Welcome back. So we saw how to use the redirect component directly inline inside of some component. We embed it, and in our case, if some condition is true, the user will be redirected directly to the /, the root route, assuming we have something to match that. And of course we do. As we can see here, we end up seeing the food search component. Now that's one option. There is another way to manually redirect somebody or to change their location, and it's a little bit more complicated. What we do is add to the history. So every browser, ignoring React Router, just browsers in general, keep track of your history. It's how the backwards and forward buttons work. And React Router has its own wrapper for that history object, and we can call .push on it. And when we push something onto it, it will redirect the user. So I'll show you an example in our food search component, which we see here. Right now, you can search for something like tea, click go, and then it takes you directly to that link, but nothing else happens along the way. If we wanted to store something in the database or send data to an API or just do anything and then redirect you, a link is not really going to work out. So we could add a button tag, and we're going to fake saving it. So we're not actually going to save data to the database, but let's say save new food. And we'll add an on click. We'll call it this.handleClick, which we need to define. This.handleClick.bind this. Okay, so then inside of handle click, if we fake saving to the database, it's just going to look like this. Let's do an alert that says saved your food to DB. So you would replace this probably with a method call like this .store food or something. You would run some code, and then at the end you want to redirect. So we would have do something, and then second redirect somewhere else. And to do that, it's this.props.history.push. So the history object is essentially a linked list, and when we push onto it, React Router takes care of basically redirecting us to the next item, to the next route, whatever is next in the history. And if we save here, you'll see right away, if we go to our app.js, we are using render, and we're not passing in any of those route props like we saw a couple videos ago up here. And if we go and we try and save a new food, we're just redirecting back to /, save your food to the database, and then we have a problem. So this.props.history is undefined. Why is that happening? Well, if we look at our props, oh boy, there's a lot going on there. We can see that inside of our form, the food form component or food search, there are no props. So what we need to do is either pass in those route props over here. So we would do route props and then pass that in. Or, well, let me just show that that works first. If I click, we now should be redirected just fine. Now we're redirecting back to the same place, but we don't have an error, and you can see that inside of our component, we now have the history prop. And if we look at the history, somewhere in here, okay, we have length of 49. We have different methods like go back, go forward. We have the location that tells us our current location. And I guess I'll just leave it at that, but there's a lot of information in here about where you've been. So that's one option. The other thing we can do is instead of using render, we can replace this with component equals, and then food, what do we call it? Food search, just like that. And React Router will take care of passing in the route params or the route props. Now, I'm not a big fan of using component, as we've already talked about at length, but I just wanted to show you that it does work. We're calling that method, saves your food to the database, and then we redirect to /. So let's change our redirect. Instead of going back to /, it's kind of useless. Let's go to /food/ whatever is actually in our form. So whatever query is. So I'm going to use backticks once again, and then interpolate in here with my $, this.state.query. Okay, so let's see if it works. I'll type something in here. Let's do hot dog, save new food, save your food to database, and then it takes us to /food/hot dog. I love to eat hot dog. Okay, so the difference between these two, just lost it, is this is a link that is just taking us directly when you click. We could style it to look like a button, but as far as the functionality, it is just linking us to a route. This button is calling some code that could do a bunch of things. It could save to a database, it could update the state, and then at the end, we're redirecting using this.props.history.push. But in order to use this.props.history, we have to make sure we have history in the props. And so the two choices are to use component like this, or to use render like we saw before. So I'll put both of them here and just comment one out. Come back to me, please. There you are. Okay, so these are both valid options. Remember, if you had other props you wanted to pass in, this version is not going to work. So if I wanted to manually pass in a prop like color equals purple, that's not going to do anything for me, but I can't do that with component. At least not with the way we have it set up now. Okay, so I commented this one out, but I'm going to leave them both there so you can see it. And that's pretty much it. So this is another way to change the route, to dynamically move the user around. And all you do is push onto history.